Today's topic of discussion is short guys. So I see a lot of people on social media complaining that women don't want them because they're too short, they're below 6 feet, and they just aren't attractive. So in this video, we're going to be discussing some key points in terms of whether or not height affects relationships and how to effectively navigate it. So first point is care. Now I'm going to play these couple clips for you guys of a woman talking about insecure men who are short and another guy talking about his experiences as a short guy. So I'll play it now for you guys.
I hate when short guys hate that they're short because it's not an issue unless you make it one. Like, some short guys just have it made and they're just him. Like, so you forget that they're short. But you can always tell, like, which short guys hate that they're short. Like, if you see them around other tall guys, they just get so... I think it's called little man syndrome. I just hate an insecure man. It gives me the ick. It really does. But a short guy who acts tall, I like y'all.
I've learned a lot about dating as a 5'6" man. And like my biggest takeaway over the past couple years is that women really don't care about height that much. And if you're someone who's like, oh, that's not true, women always are telling me I'm too short or I only date guys who are 6 feet tall, just understand that that's not the real reason she rejected you. In fact, I find that there's two common reasons why women will reject men, and it's not because they're short. Even if she verbally told you, I don't date short guys, that's not the real reason. So the first reason why like short guys just have a tough time with dating is because a lot of them lack social calibration. They have a temper, they're just kind of a dickhead, right? And when you talk to these girls, they just kind of think you're an asshole and they just box you in this category of someone who has Napoleon syndrome. So that's what resorts to them actually like making fun of you for being short, right? You kind of just asked for it, if I'm being honest. And then the second reason is a lot of guys, they just kind of lack self-awareness. They can't actually objectively look at themselves in the mirror and say, the reason women don't like me is because I'm 40 pounds overweight, or because I am not very attractive, or because I look like my mom dressed me, or, I just lack social skills when talking to girls, right? It's just a lot easier for them to point the finger and say it's their height because that gives them an easy way out. It lets them be lazy. Now they're not forced to work on themselves. But what I've found as a 5'6" man is, your lack of height is actually a blessing in disguise. Like, obviously, a lot of women prefer men who are taller, but here's the deal. Most men, especially the taller guys, don't take the time to work on their personal self-development. So they'll be lacking in a lot of different areas, whether that's their physique, their finances, their social skills, whatever. So as a shorter man, if you take the time to become as well-rounded as possible in all these areas of your life, you're automatically going to stick out like a sore thumb. And women are instantly going to pick you over most of the guys they're talking to because you're just undeniably her best pick. So as a shorter man, instead of playing the victim, just play with the cards you were dealt, bet on yourself, and make the most of it. And you'll find that height really isn't that big of a deal.
Okay, so you guys are back now. You've had a watch of it. Now, from the first clip, the woman was talking about how there's certain insecure guys who have this Napoleon Hill complex and they just always complaining that they're short. Now, the truth of the matter is, right, the first point that she made is very true. So, guys, they seem to make it their identity. So if you look at people in society, there's certain people who are either short or tall. So the short guys will make it as though their life is over. Just things have failed and they don't have anything else that they can work on. So you got those set of people. And then you got certain tall people who are, let's say, 6'2", 6'3", 6'5", etc. And they make it their identity. They say, oh, I'm 6'3". Both of those are issues. Now some of you guys are thinking, wait, but the guy's tall, like it's a flex. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's not a flex because it's something that he hasn't had to earn. Meaning that you as a man, you have to provide value to society. Whatever way you can. Now, if you guys understand that, you understand purpose, mission, drive, determination, pushing forward. You're not going to care what other people think of you or what other people see you as. You gotta realize, right, that God has given you a set of cards and you need to embrace it. Now, she also mentioned a few other points about insecurity. Now, there's certain guys who become so insecure that they just self-disqualify themselves. So if they see, let's say, an attractive woman who they like or they have a preference towards, they're just going to self-disqualify themselves and not even try. That's the worst thing you can do in life, when you don't even try. Imagine that, you just sat on the sidelines, just watching life go by. So certain guys who are watching this, they're thinking, I care too much about my height, or I care about what other people think of me. That's what the issue is. You need to start working on that. You need to start realizing that people are always going to judge you. So that's why it's really important to be the best judge of yourself. You got to start looking at yourself and seeing yourself as attractive. Now, you don't be delusional and saying, oh yeah, I'm the best looking person in the world. You're not doing any of that, but you're secure within yourself. You know that God has created everybody in different shapes and sizes. Some people are watching this, they don't believe in God, or they don't believe in higher power. Then, God help you. I can't help you sets of people. You lot are just gonna, continue being miserable. But the people who are watching this, who do believe in God, who understand that life is a journey, you're going to continue pushing forward. You're going to continue elevating. So that's that first part of the video. And that woman there, right, she also mentioned how she should put certain guys in a category where the guy who rocks it, who owns it, who's secure within himself, he's not going to make it his identity and self-disqualify himself. That's what the issue is. When those set of guys make it their life. And then with regards to the second video now. So that guy there, he mentioned that he's 5'6". And he was saying that he's worked on himself and he's improved himself. And then that's allowed him to elevate and actually not have a severe detriment on his relationships. So there's guys who will just literally put themselves in the bracket of, I've got short man syndrome, and then I'm going to project by doing the most, becoming too emotional, becoming too aggressive, too assertive, to try and make up for my inadequacies. Some people, they start shouting more, they start trying to enforce their power onto other people. You know, they have to make up for being short. I mean, that's just pathetic, because those guys there are just, you call them, you know, midgets or whatever you want to call them. You know, people just label them as short man syndrome. But the other set of people who are short and own it, trust me, you're not going to give a damn what other people think. You know, that's when you hit a whole new level. So next point is stats. Now, from the stats, right, you got all these different boxes. So let's say you had 10 boxes. And then one of them was height. So you got, let's say you're 5'5". But then other boxes is, let's say, money, status, you know, looks, so as in your physique. So that's all external boxes there. But then you've also got internal boxes. So confidence, personality, development of character. You know, you got good sense of humor. You know, you're a team player. You're somebody who's resilient. You know, you're ticking off more and more boxes. You know, you want to be that type of guy that's well-rounded. You know, so everyone on this planet has got deficiencies. They've got weaknesses. You know, that's why you got to work on all of your weaknesses, the ones that you can control. You know, so I've mentioned before as well, when it comes to emotional intelligence, tone of voice, being able to be calm under pressure, you know, improving in all those areas. You know, so when you keep ticking off more and more boxes, you know, a woman's going to look at that and she's going to think, oh, okay, he's short in height, but he ticks off all these other boxes. You know, you want to be that type of guy where you've got a lot of other areas covered, rather than just being one person who's just one box. So, like the guy was saying in the video, you know, certain guys who are tall, you know, some of them have got bland personalities. You know, some of you guys have probably met some of those individuals. They're on the other side of the spectrum, where they're just completely dull. You know, they ain't got nothing else going for themselves. They're just tall. You know, they ain't got no determination, drive, willpower, going out there working on their purpose, trying to improve their life. You know, becoming mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually stronger. You know, these people here, they just become stagnant. And then when you're stagnant, you know, you're effectively dying. So, next point is confidence. Now, a lot of women mention confidence. They say they like a man who's confident. Now, a lot of the black pill guys, red pill guys who are going to be watching this, they're going to say, that's BS, that's nonsense. These guys here, they haven't got a clue. They have no understanding of how women's brains work. So women, by their nature, they're very indecisive. They're very emotional. So they need a man who's a leader. Somebody who's confident. Somebody who's confident and has the ability to make decisions for her. So I'll give you guys an example. Let's say you've got a guy who's 6'6", tall, attractive, good looking. Let's give an example of, let's say, Will Smith. And then Will Smith, everyone obviously knows what's happening with Will Smith. But he's an example of somebody who's tall, athletic, good looking, but his wife has cheated on him multiple times and she disrespects him. Why is that the case? Why is it that these women here may be attracted to these guys but then don't respect them? Because obviously his confidence is low. He feels as though he can't get better, or he doesn't have the self-respect to walk away. Or it could be both. So when Jada, is it Jaden or Jada or whatever her name is, when she sees him, she sees him as somebody who's not confident. He's not able to make decisions. And then guess what? She ends up becoming the masculine man in the relationship. This is what happens with a lot of people in today's time. They focus too much on looks maxing and they've got such insecure characters. It's pathetic. I tell these people to do a basic task, such as talking in front of 10 people or 100 people. You watch how these people start crumbling, they start shivering. I'm in front of 10 people, 100 people. They start overthinking. Somebody who's able to be confident in his own abilities and keep pushing forward. It's like women just naturally gravitate towards that guy. See that this guy here, he's going places. He's straight, he's going directly. This is what he's doing in life. And that also relates back to eye contact. When you're looking at a woman, you're looking at her straight in the eyes. Not left and right and looking down and just all over the place. That guy there, he's not confident. Somebody who's confident, he's looking at a woman straight, directly in her eyes. When he's talking to her, especially. Or when she's talking to him. Because these guys here, right, as soon as they see a pretty woman, they start getting all nervous, they start getting timid, they start thinking, they start overthinking. That shows right there that this guy here is not confident. With confidence, it develops through life experience. You need to go through more hardships, you need to go through more suffering. You need to go through more pain. And then you need to reflect on that. So there's a guy called Ray Dalio who's an investment. He's created the most successful hedge fund out there. So guys who have read his book will know about him. So this guy here created a formula. So pain plus reflection equals progress.
Pain plus reflection equals progress. Okay? Your best learnings come from the pain. It's a message. Pay attention. Learn how reality works and how to deal with it differently so you have principles for dealing with reality better. And I learned that process. And from that process, my company, Bridgewater, became the largest hedge fund in the world, extremely successful.
Managing how much?
$150 billion. 1,500 people, $150 billion. You know.
So for guys who want to take note of that. So pain plus reflection equals progress. So with that, right, you're going to be able to develop confidence. You don't just get confidence from being sat at home playing games all day. You can play games and then level up in your characters in there, but you're not leveling up your character in real life. You need to be socially aware. So, final point is personality. Now, personality is what's going to help you shine in the whole room. They're going to see that this guy here is different. His energy is unmatched. He's able to speak to a whole audience, a crowd of people, and get their attention and be able to influence them. He's not being short and aggressive and trying to bark his way and shouting and trying to overcompensate for his shortness. You don't want to be that type of guy. You know what the saying is, less is more. So you just need to be chilled back for the most part. And then get people to open up about themselves. Literally doing the basic things. Having a smile on you, having a good sense of humor, being able to connect with people. That right there is positive energy. You don't want to be some dirty, negative guy who's just always complaining that, he got the short end of the stick. Guys are just pathetic. Go cry. You know what I'm saying? To the short people, go cry. Continue, crying about your height your whole life if you're going to do that. Don't complain afterwards saying that women don't want you. Or guys who are below 6 feet, women don't like guys who are below 6 feet. They only want the guys who are in the top 20%. That's another false narrative that's being pushed out there in today's time. If you do your history, go look at during the British Industrial Revolution. Average height was around 5'5". But guess what? They had relationships, marriages, 20, 30, 40 plus years. And they were hard-working men. They were masculine men. That's what the issue is. Testosterone has decreased. It's been going down. So when it's been going down over the years, that's when guys are becoming more and more feminine. Now, that's what the issue is. So, just to wrap up, care. So, guys who care too much about what other people think of them, so they'll care about the way they look to other people, they're too short, they aren't attractive. You know, these are the guys that women throw in the insecure category. They put these guys in the beta male simp category with all them little other minions. You know, you want to be that guy who's exceptional. You know, you don't want to be in that box there. You want to be in your own box. This guy here, he is different. You know, he doesn't let his height faze him or affect him. And then next point after that was stats. So some people will get too caught up on the centimeters. So some guys who are watching this, they'll be like, oh, this guy here, Klaus Mowers, he looks like he's about 3 foot, or he looks like he's 5 foot, or he looks like a midget, or whatever the case is. You know, you guys here are going to need to develop thick skin and realize these guys here are like minions themselves. They got a minion mindset. Now, you shouldn't care what other people are doing in life. You should focus on what you're doing and what your stats are. So you got to be objective with yourself. Focus on what you can improve. So you can improve your physique, get in better shape, eat cleaner, healthier foods, you know, become more disciplined, well-rounded masculine man. You know, improve your finances, you know, your connection with God. You know, other things like social network, developing your EQ, emotional intelligence. All those different areas you guys can work on. You know, why you guys just focus on the one thing that you can't control? You know, it doesn't make any logical sense to just focus on something you can't control. Now, this is what the issue is. When guys get too caught up on what's on the internet and what other people are saying to them in real life. You know, once you become a well-rounded masculine man, nobody's even going to be commenting on your height or your shortness. You know, I can't remember the last time I was called short or whatever in real life, because you see it all over the internet. You know, obviously TikTok, YouTube, because that's where the incels are. You know, you got all the little minions who are crying in the comment sections. You know, you'll never see people in real life talk about this and say XYZ, because you make them feel good in real life. You make them, you spark energy into people. You know, that's what matters in real life. You know, not this whole social media thing. And then next one after that was confidence. So confidence is the ability to do something, and to have confidence to have the ability to do something. So trusting in your own actions and having faith in your own actions that you can do something. So if, for example, you're starting off driving and then you take driving lessons, and then you go for your test. You know, you need to be a confident driver to be able to pass the test. You know, if you're not confident, you're going to likely fail your test. You know, that's what happens with guys. Guys are failing on a day-to-day basis and they're just quitting. You know, if you quit, you're never going to see the finish line. You know, you have to keep going. You have to keep pushing. And that's what happens when you keep working on yourself. You know, as time goes on, you'll become more and more confident. And don't think for a second that women can't see that. So, final point was personality. Personality is really, really important. You know, you need to be who you are. Don't try and be somebody who you're not. You know, women can smell that from a mile away. They can smell that this guy here is putting on a facade, he's putting on a fake image, he's trying to compensate for areas that he's lacking. You know, you don't want to be that guy who's short or under 6 feet or whatever, and you're trying to project your insecurities. And you're trying to say to her, oh look, I got money though, I got a nice car, I got this and that, all this external tangible BS. You know, you should be proud of who you are as a person. You know, you should be actively improving yourself. And then when a woman comes around you, she'll see that this guy here makes me laugh. He gives me good experiences. I feel positive energy around him. You know, so a guy who's on paper 6'6", money, status, XYZ. You know, she looks at someone like yourself, and she sees that this guy makes me feel so good. You know, I don't care about this other guy. The other guy is just, on paper, he sounds good, but I don't feel anything towards him. You know, certain times, right, when you improve yourself so much, you best bet you can get taller women. So there's a guy called Tom Holland and Zendaya. You know, so that's an example. And there's things like Jason Statham. There's a few other guys as well. You know, a bunch of other different people who have taller partners, wives, XYZ. You know, but to be able to pull off a relationship like that, you best believe you need to be confident in yourself. Because if you're not, then you ain't going to be able to pull off a relationship like that. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.